Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here in this pre-Halloween leadership donor thank you event. It's always thank you. We have over 12,000 leadership donors. That's donors that give us $1,000 or more in a year. And I think we've had some tremendous impact this year, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of that impact here briefly. And then also, then I'm going to quickly shift it over to Linda Shropshire Eudy, and we're going to have a really dynamic panel of heroes. These are leaders on the front lines that are doing the work to eradicate poverty, and we're so proud to partner with them, and we're really proud to partner with all of you. You have given of your interest and your time and your dollars, and we couldn't be more grateful for what you all do. We want to make more. We want to make these kind of gatherings virtual and hopefully otherwise more of a habit, because we really feel that the more we know about our community collectively, the more we can learn, the more engaged we're going to be, and the more we can contribute. We're blessed to be in this position here at United Way, that we can have impact. Last year, and you all have probably heard me say this before, last year around this time, I'd be saying that there are 200,000 souls in the Greater Triangle that are suffering from the ravages of poverty. And then I would also say that 2 to 3 times that amount are one crisis away from being in that same predicament. Well, that crisis has arrived in the form of COVID-19, and the situation for many of our neighbors is quite dire, and we don't want to underestimate that point. We want to be positive and upbeat. I think we can and will and do it in terms of meeting the promise of our mission to eradicate poverty, increase social mobility through the power of partnerships. But we're in a crisis right now, and we shouldn't underestimate that for a minute. The thing about crises, and crises like this one, is while they bring you to your knees, they also bring you together. And it's hard to say that sometimes as we're in this very divisive electoral season. But I'm inspired by the leadership I see every day. People like you who are given of their time and on the corporate side, and just given of their time and their treasure. But also, what I see with everyday heroes on the front lines of this crisis, working with their neighbors to really make a change. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done and then move it on pretty quickly here. Next slide. So our mission, as I mentioned, you know what our mission is, but it's to eradicate poverty and increase social mobility through the power of partnerships. We remain steadfast in our focus on cradle to career, healthy families, and equity and leadership now more than ever. Next slide. We at the start of the crisis, right around March, when everything was shutting down, we moved quickly to start a rapid response fund to meet the needs or attempt to meet the needs of the COVID-19 to move towards a response. We have raised to date a little over $1.5 million. That went dollar for dollar into the community. We did not take any administrative cost. The Community Investment Committee, led by Jeff Howell, and Nick Allen, put together an incredibly proficient mechanism to get the voices of our community leaders so that we were able to target those dollars to the places where and in the areas where it was needed most. So you can see the impacts before you. Over 500,000 healthy, nutritious meals, 4,000 people that were provided, over 4,000 people that were provided emergency rental and housing services, and just thousands and thousands of children and families getting the resources they needed for education and for medication. This is right on time funding that came in 6 rounds. It was not a grant writing contest. It went to over 100 nonprofits on the front line, some of which you may have heard of. Big organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA and others who were pivoting to meet the needs of their community. And many that you may not have heard of. These are small grassroots organizations. But regardless of the size of these organizations, many of them were struggling and many of them were pivoting to meet the needs of the community. So it was not at all uncommon for an education organization like Book Harvest to be pivoting and turning into a food distribution center because the needs were so acute. So these kind of changes cost money, but we were also, the thing that I'm probably most proud of is the fact that we were in such close communication with our partners on the ground, and we continue to be there. And this is not, this is not your typical United Way campaign response. And I'm not saying the campaign is still as critical now. It's probably more critical now than ever. But the fact that we can respond to crisis in this way, with this kind of quick, responsive, data-driven, community-led kind of mechanism, I think separates us from a lot of other organizations, a lot of other United Ways. Next slide, please. We also launched the Anti-Racism Community Fund. As you all know, equity and leadership has been a pillar here since I started. We believe that if we are going to be an anti-poverty organization, we also need to be an anti-racist organization, with programs like the 10 to Watch, of which Ricky Hurtado is a proud member. We're able to support the inevitable success of women leaders and leaders of color. We really took a look, and we're continuing to take a look at our portfolio and putting our thumb on the scale of organizations that are led by people of color and women, and then also organizations that are taking a strong stance on anti-racism, not only in terms of trainings, which is important, and we'll fund some of that, but what we're all committed to doing is really attacking and changing the racist systems that we are all a part of. And that takes real work. It takes a distribution of power that we need to be clear-eyed about. And we're excited to continue to move forward with it. This is the beginning. It began 3 years ago and it continues, but we have a lot of work to do because this is not just a health pandemic. It is a racial pandemic, and we need to do more. So we're committed to doing that at this United Way, and we're excited about it. Next slide. So I'm really excited to introduce the heroes that I mentioned on our panel. Linda Shropshire Eudy is going to be the moderator. She's a member of our board, a global leader at Cisco, a human rights, a member. She is the co-chair of our community investment committee, and is just a tremendous community leader and someone who I lean on a lot, and just really gets it. So Linda, great to have you with us. Ginger Young, the founder of Book Harvest, she'll tell you all about the work that she does there. Same thing, Ginger is an amazing leader, someone who I've leaned on, and we've leaned on, and just the amount of impact that she's had is incredible. And then Ricky Hurtado, co-founder and co-executive director of LatinxEd, currently running for North Carolina House of Representatives, a member of the 10 to Watch, the inaugural group of the 10 to Watch, and just having a tremendous impact on our community. And I'm just so proud to introduce these leaders. And let's get right to it, because this is a conversation that I know you're all showing up for. And just finally, I just really, really want to thank you all again for your support. We cannot meet the needs of the community without it. And again, I think there's real power in the fact that there are over 12,000 individual donors that step up every day, and over 1,200 leadership donors. That's really significant to me, that so many of you have dug a little deeper to meet the needs of this community. And my dogs are right on time here, so I'm going to put it on mute and introduce the panel. Linda?
Okay. Okay, again, I am Linda Shropshire Eudy, and I am so delighted to be here with all of you today. I would like to start by acknowledging the incredible dedication of Eric and the entire staff at the United Way of the Greater Triangle. Eric, we all stand in gratitude for all the ways you are pushing the envelope, and uplifting our communities with humility and grace. Thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Linda.
As Eric said, we are living in some very unprecedented times. We are surrounded by a deadly virus, and we are living through a social justice crisis that, quite frankly, threatens our everyday sensibilities. But even so, there is light and hope all around us. Such is the case here with the organizations that are represented: Book Harvest and Latinx Education. I'd like to start with you, Ricky. You founded Latinx Education in North Carolina, which provides targeted multi-year support to Latinx students and immigrant families striving for higher education and greater opportunities. The mission and vision of Latinx is to both amplify the lived experiences of the Latinx immigrant families and break down the educational barriers here in North Carolina, as well as to cultivate Southern Latinx leaders who strive to ensure immigrant families have the freedom to dream and create a better future for their children and their communities. As a United Way 10 to Watch leader, how has your partnership with the United Way empowered you as a leader? And how has it impacted the mission of your organization here in the Triangle?
Hey, thanks so much, Linda, for that introduction. Eric, thank you as well for bringing us together, and the whole United Way staff. And thank you all to all the supporters here of the United Way. Without your support of the United Way, we certainly could not do the work that we do on the ground every day. Yeah, Linda, great question to start off with when we think about how this partnership has really allowed LatinxEd to thrive in this moment. It's not a word that's often used, but I think we find ourselves in a unique situation where we're really trying to keep our ear to the community and make sure we're meeting them where they are. I'd say that this partnership with the United Way has really empowered me and our staff as leaders by providing us a platform. The 10 to Watch opportunity is actually a bit of a dream come true for me. I've worked with a lot of foundations in the past. I've done a lot of work in equity and consulting work before co-founding and co-leading LatinxEd. And programs, these sorts of fellowship opportunities where we are, I call it signal boosting, right? Where we are on the ground doing important work, but when we partner with an institution, organization like the United Way, allows us to really tell our story in a much more powerful way. And so it was perfect timing for LatinxEd because it allowed us to really begin telling a bigger community across the Greater Triangle what we were doing and why we were doing it, right? Which was really trying to focus on education equity in the Latinx and immigrant community. Really important in this moment as this community in particular grows across North Carolina, especially across the Greater Triangle. I'd say the other part of this in terms of our own leadership has been the opportunity to actually create a community around us. I think one of the biggest challenges for me as a leader of color and a young leader is and really for any executive director, if we're being honest, right, is it's lonely. It's hard work. It's lonely work at times. You're not really sure where to turn to for support. And the fact that I had this cohort of 10 folks around me that I still talk to pretty regularly, right, in terms of big picture questions, right, around fundraising strategy, or, you know, smaller tactical questions like, hey, what accountant do you use? You know, it's just those sorts of things that happen formally within this program, but also informally, just by the power of relationships. And I'd say the last thing related to your question, Linda, is really the opportunity to lead. I think that I've been really impressed with the United Way, that they've been walking the walk when it comes to issues of anti-racism and equity. It's felt like a very democratic process in terms of how we talk about issues, share information, and really allowed us to lean into our expertise. A big mantra for the organization is that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. We feel strongly about that as we work with Latinx students every day, as most of our staff is a part of immigrant families, and we sort of live these lives every day, right? And the United Way certainly recognized that through this opportunity, and allowed us to inform some of their programming and strategies, as well as sort of think about what this looks like in the future. So I could go on for longer than what we have here, but I think that just sort of gives you an idea on what that's looked like for us over the last few years.
This is incredible. Ricky, we are so proud of the work that you're doing to drive change in our community. I mean, talk about a leader. We are sure that your work is only just beginning, and you are a 10 to watch leader for sure. I love it that you mentioned thriving in this moment, because there are a lot of people who feel like they're just surviving. And so it's great for us to know that the partnership we've created not only helps you to survive, but to thrive in this uncertain environment. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. Ginger, I would like to turn to you and talk a little bit about something that's very near and dear to my heart: books and book harvest. One of the core values of Book Harvest is that all children have the right to own books from birth. As well, Book Harvest believes that books must serve as windows, mirrors, and sliding doors for all children, which means that if this is true, books must portray all children, honoring diverse backgrounds, languages, abilities, perspectives. And books must also include stories by and about people of color. Could you share with us some of the challenges that are often presented when it comes to providing books for our communities that serve as mirrors and windows? And further, what is Book Harvest doing to solve the systemic literacy issue?
I love these questions, Linda. I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to start with a story. I was a scrawny, very shy child. And I remember in second grade being on the playground and having the boys pull my red pigtails and tease me. And the way I got through that was Pippi Longstocking. I'm sure many of you know the story of Pippi Longstocking. She had red pigtails. She was not shy. She was actually a badass and bold and completely willing to be unconventional. And every time I was having a tough day, that book was under my pillow at night. And I say that because children's books are incredible touchstones for social and emotional development. Whoever said that childhood was carefree, I don't know who they were, but even I, who had an incredibly easy childhood, dealt with a whole lot of stuff. And books like Pippi Longstocking, Harriet the Spy were books that I could see myself in. And to this day, I can remember what a comfort and a solace and a sense of empowerment they brought me. And I'm going to ask you all a favor. If you're willing, I ask everybody this and every time I have a group conversation, so forgive me. But I would be really grateful if anybody on this call is willing to just drop into the chat their favorite children's book that had an enduring impact on them. Because I'm always eager to hear these stories and remind each of us and myself how important books were to our childhoods. We know that books build brains, and I spend an awful lot of time talking to people about third grade reading proficiency and long-term success in school. But actually, books build a whole lot more than brains. They build empathy, they build curiosity, they build creativity, they build vocabulary, imagination, knowledge. And I have to say, in that long list, there's one thing I haven't yet mentioned, which is the most important thing they build, and that is a child's sense of identity as a reader. That's what was going on with me in second grade when I was getting through those awful playground experiences with my Pippi Longstocking as my armor. And that's what every child deserves to have the right to do, to armor up against the world and whatever it's bringing them as challenges, and have books that they are reflected in. Imagine a world in which every child can see herself in the pages of a book. That's what we're after, and we think we can get there. The problem, there are many problems here, but I started Book Harvest out of the back of my minivan in 2011 with this very simple idea that every child should have a stack of books on their bedside table and should have bedtime stories. That's a nice, attractive, fun idea, and it's really appealing, and it's kind of disarmingly lovable. And in fact, it's worked really well. We've provided almost 1.4 million books to children in the Greater Triangle since we started in 2011. But I realized about 3 or 4 years in that although having books at home was necessary, it by and of itself was not sufficient. We needed to do a lot more careful reflection within ourselves about what were the books we were providing to children. Here's the problem. The publishing industry is woefully inadequate. So when you operate on a system of receiving book donations from the larger, very generous community, you get what's been published. And that is in the process of changing for the better, but we got a long way to go. In 2018, of all the children's books that were published in our country, 50% had main characters who were white. The next category was 27%, and the main characters in those books were animals. So 77% of the books out there in 2018 that were published did not reflect children of color, did not reflect Spanish-speaking children. And in fact, when I look at the 23% that were representative of children unlike me, I find that it's so much better than it was in 2011 when I got started. We're getting there, but we got a long way to go. And I just have to say that one of the ways we have been able to do this is with United Way's Rapid Response Fund. We received a grant this summer when everybody is trying to keep learning alive, and we're doing it with books, to be able to purchase enough mirrors and windows books that are mirrors for children and windows onto other worlds, that 1,600 books could go out to kids to build home libraries. These were books in Spanish, bilingual books, books that had African-American characters. They were gorgeous, all brand new books. That's the work we're going to be doing more and more of in the future, and we're so privileged and honored to be able to partner with United Way to do this. It's changing kids' lives every day and giving them that identity as a reader that has meaning for them.
Thank you, Ginger. I wholeheartedly agree that books do a whole lot more than build brains. And to have a book that represents you and your culture means so much to a kid. Speaking of a kid that didn't have many of those growing up. I want to pivot a little bit and talk a little bit more about the pandemic. The pandemic has represented several new challenges for all of us. While organizations such as yours are working hard to find solutions, we found that we need to be able to lean on communities. Ricky, what are some of the challenges your organization has had to overcome as a result of COVID-19? And what have been some of the positive outcomes that you've seen?
Yeah, of course, we have to address this question, right? It's still on top of everyone's minds as we continue to navigate this storm together. I would say one of the biggest challenges in education right now with remote learning is sort of, at the end of the day, human relationships are still foundational to learning, right? We recognize that, and it's, has never been as evident as it has been now. The second part of the challenging elements of the pandemic is we know that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted the Latino community in North Carolina. I've honestly stopped tracking the numbers because it's become so overwhelming. But I know late summer, it was in some parts of North Carolina, over 60-70% of the community was impacted by tested positive of the cases were in the Latino community. We know that because of many immigrant families, their parents are essential workers and are literally feeding North Carolina. And so that has created many, many challenges for our families that we recognize every day as we continue to think about how we support them. I'd say at LatinxEd, given that we're an education initiative, we really battled with how do we maintain support in this moment where we recognize there's some overwhelming systemic challenges that may be distracting folks from what learning at home could look like, right? That we cannot fix overnight, right? Multi-generational households who may not have enough space in their homes to learn when you have multiple kids in an environment. But I think the way we've really been able to overcome that is just focusing on what we do best, right? Which is making sure that we are still creating connections between mentors and staff and the students that we serve across the triangle. And so I think that the silver lining to all of these challenges, while they can be overwhelming, is that one of our biggest challenges in serving more students has been geography, right? It's expensive to serve more students across the triangle, but with remote learning, it's actually accelerated a lot of what we were doing. From college advising to mentorship, we do all that online now. And it's something we've wanted to do for the last 3 years, actually. And now we're sort of forced in this moment. And it's actually allowed us to see numbers in our program grow much more rapidly than we have before. And we see that human relationships are still foundational in this education work, and we can still do this online. And so we've actually seen families from across the triangle and actually across the state flock towards the program as they think about what does it look like to get into college and where can I seek help. We know counselors and teachers are overwhelmed right now, and so we've been happy to be able to lend a hand there to address some of this advising work with them in a bicultural and bilingual way.
This is great. I mean, I love hearing these silver linings, and there are so many. I think one of the things that we will come to understand about this pandemic and what I'm calling the great pause is we are tapping into our creativity like we've never done before in this modern age. So I'm grateful for that. Ginger, I'd like to come to you and ask you the same question. I know the pandemic has presented a lot of challenges for all of us, but how is it that Book Harvest has met some of those challenges, and what are some of the positive outcomes that you've seen?
Well, I will echo what Ricky said, which is that crisis really does accelerate innovation. And I have a great example of that. I was sitting in a meeting in the Book Harvest conference room on March 11th, going over our plans to provide 98,000 books to local school children in 30 elementary schools across Durham in May and June. I knew there was this thing out there, but we were on track. We were going to deliver it. We were set to go. And on March 13th, everything collapsed. So suddenly we had no mechanism, school-based mechanism, to get books out to kids as we were planning to. And we also had no way to continue the work we were doing in our Book Babies program, which is a home-based, home-visiting, parent-led coaching session that we work with over 300 families of children ages 0 to 5 in Durham. On the morning of March 13th, I came into my office. I sat down with my 3 colleagues. We all trust each other hugely. And we, in 3 hours, hammered out what we had been talking about doing for over a year and what we would have spent 2 years doing in a normal time, which is to write a home visiting protocol that was virtual. We launched it on March 16th, and we continue to refine it today. Every week it gets a little better, and we listen to parents to put that feedback into the mix. On March 11th, if you had told me that, I would have thought, this is crazy. You're making this up. I don't know what you're talking about. On March 13th, I saw our home visiting protocol go virtual on paper. We put it to work on the next Monday, and we're still doing it. And so it says to me, we can do things because we have existing trusted relationships. We can do things that we simply couldn't do before or didn't think we could do. Now, between April 1st and September 30th, we have now provided 98,104 books to children in a variety of places that are not schools. Took longer, but we're reaching out to them through a program called Grab and Go at Book Harvest. We've got something called Well Fed, Well Read, where we're showing up wherever there are food programs with bags of books. And in my mind, long after COVID is over, we should be continuing to bundle books with food in any nutrition program. It's a total winner to have kids who are well-fed and well-read. We're showing up in laundromats, barbershops, health clinics, you name it. We're getting books out there. We just don't have the usual infrastructure that we did. Most of what we're learning is going to serve us really well after COVID is behind us. And that's very energizing and very inspiring for me.
That's amazing. 98,000 books to kids in this community during this era of COVID. I'm in awe of this work, as you know, Ginger, and I know that books change lives and we must never stop with this work. So most recently, in addition to the pandemic, social justice is heavy on the minds of the American public. And United Way recently announced the Anti-Racism Community Fund. This fund is intended to invest in local leaders of color to build resource capacity and to create environments where Triangle residents hold the power they need to create community level change. The fund will also invest in nonprofits with systemic approaches to dismantling racist structure and housing, food, health, workforce, and education. Ricky, I'd like to turn to you to start with this question. How does the work of LatinxEd align with that of the anti-racist stance that the United Way of the Greater Triangle has taken to tackle this systemic issue?
Yeah, another. You're full of great questions today, Linda. These are great questions. It is certainly a heavy one, right? Similar to COVID-19, as we continue to navigate not just a public health crisis, but like you said, a racial justice crisis here in America. I'd say for us, it's twofold. With LatinxEd, it's interesting, right? Because we recognize that systemic issues, systemic racism impacts the Latino students and immigrant families that we work with every day in the field of education. But we also recognize that the Latino community also has a role in not perpetuating racism, especially against our Black brothers and sisters in our communities, right? We recognize the legacy of racism in Latin America, and that is certainly still true in the United States today. And so over the summer, as we're retooling our programming to go online for college advising and identity development for our Latino students, we see what's happened across America, right, with the murder of George Floyd. And so we began to have really serious conversations internally around what does anti-racism look like for us as a Latino organization that wants to stand in solidarity with Black organizations and leaders that are mourning and hurting right now. And so while we're still sort of figuring out what that looks like for us, one of the things we did immediately is we started launching a weekly, we call them cafecitos, which is sort of like coffee chats on Facebook Live with our staff, with special guests, to continue the education that we provided to the community around issues of education, around equity, around racial justice. And many of those, we made sure we integrated these topics of racial justice and what does it look like to have solidarity among communities of color and low-income communities that are, at the end of the day, really facing very similar issues. And so I say we still have a lot of growth there, but it's certainly something that we are eager to continue partnering with as we think about what does this look like on a bigger scale, right? Like, what does this look like with other Tend to Watch partners, right? Other organizations that we talk to every day. What does it look like to very intentionally collaborate to make sure we're advancing this work together? And so I was really excited when I saw the news about the anti-racism fund at the United Way, because I think that's exactly what we need to be doing to continue advancing these issues, but also to continue this conversation, because we do know that there was a lot of urgency over the summer, and now sort of as time progresses, folks sort of perhaps lose some of that urgency, but it's never been more urgent as it is now. And so I'm glad that the United Way is pushing that forward as well.
Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that. Ginger, I'd like to ask you the same question. How is it that Book Harvest is working to help to create these opportunities and dismantle racist structures and these systemic areas such as housing, food, health, and education?
Let me take a stab at this. I wish I had about 3 hours to talk about this one because I think it's the heart of everything that matters. I'm going to answer both internally, organizationally facing, and then public facing. And these are just tips of the iceberg. If anybody wants to talk further about this, certainly nourishes me to do so. This is a very long journey, and every day represents a tiny bit of progress, but there's so much work to be done. And what I absolutely love about this time is that we are denormalizing stuff that has felt and been treated by larger systems and by white mainstream culture for far too long as okay, when most of it is not okay. And so watching, I've talked to a lot of my social justice friends who are out on the front lines of this work every day. We all have friends who are doing this work and we're doing it ourselves. And I'm hearing time and again from pretty much everybody that this feels different. We've had flare-ups before where, you know, I remember saying after Sandy Hook, well, we're finally going to get some gun safety laws, finally, because you can't have that happen without a response. And I was wrong. And I'm crushed by that. This time, everybody's telling me it feels different. And I'm going to go with that because I'm ready to do the work. My Book Harvest colleagues are. Internally, we've set up something called the Harvesting Equity Project Working Group. It's a subset of our staff. We have a staff of 14 people, and it's a subset that is really digging deep into the work, in particular of Dr. Kendi, and looking at how do we create an organization that is not white dominant culture, that thinks about these issues in every aspect of our identity, whether it's our hiring, our book purchases, which is the number one thing I always go to first, where we put our resources, how we provide professional development for not just our staff, but our families. And how do we provide support for people to go into what may be traumatizing spaces and do it with a fair amount of checking in constantly. That's all I know to say. It's got to be we've got to recalibrate and check in and make sure people are okay with this every step of the way, because this is stuff that's been unaddressed forever. And the gaps that our families are facing have become chasms because of COVID. And the knowledge and awareness of so many people who were just blissfully unaware of some of these issues that George Floyd and others brought up, their knowledge is growing and they're open to learning more. So we want to do everything we can to support that journey, both within our staff and with the parents who are in our Book Babies program, who are parents of children who receive books through some of our other programs. We have a role to play, as do all nonprofits in the United Way universe, in making sure we are saying the words that need to be said over and over again, so that what has been treated as, I'm not sure what the right word for this, as fringe or an afterthought before, becomes totally in the lane of normal, and that we don't let ourselves backslide. So we have a lot of work to do. I don't quite know what it looks like. I'm very humbled by how much I don't know and how much my staff doesn't know. Our board, as Linda and another person on this call can attest, is along for the ride in ways that are incredibly powerful. And it gives me the feeling that our staff can do this work on our front lines with our programs, even as it's really hard. And I'm super grateful to be in this space. I'm super grateful to be a part of the United Way universe, where there is an anti-racism fund, which itself is a platform and a megaphone to make sure everybody's paying attention.
Amen to that, Andrew. It does feel different. You know, I think I recognize the difference when my two kids, one age 19 and one age 22, left my house to go join a protest in downtown Raleigh. And I realized at that moment, as much as I had done to cocoon them in this really cool Durham community, I could neither stop them or protect them. And so we are at this point, and we must either go along for the ride, or we're going to get left behind because the young people have spoken. I want to stay on this topic of race and social justice. And I'm going to come back to you, Ricky. What role does community engagement and volunteerism play in combating racism and racial inequities in the community that you serve?
Yeah, I believe that, I mean, that we do, I completely agree with Ginger, right? We do have a long road ahead, both personally as organizations and as communities. I'd say that what this these opportunities for volunteerism really allow us to is to build trust. It's an opportunity for education, for awareness, but to build trust. And I think with that trust then comes the hard conversations around what it looks like to move forward, right? It allows all of us an opportunity to listen and to learn and to really close that empathy gap. I have found myself in the last 6 months listening more than I ever have before to everyone in our community. Eric and others pointed out in the beginning that I am running for office. So there's also another reason I've been listening a lot in my local community here in Alamance. But it's opened my eyes, right? Where I really truly do feel that there's more that unites us than divides us. And I think that in doing so, right, allows us an opportunity to have those hard conversations. And so I do think it's an opportunity for us to continue this dialogue, but we cannot just continue having the conversation, right? It's really about our motto at LatinxEd is translating dreams into action, right? So I think these volunteer opportunities, these community engagement opportunities is really about how do we then translate that dialogue into action as well to make sure that we're moving the ball forward on issues of racial injustice and inequity.
Thank you so much, Ricky. This has been so inspiring. And as I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about the words of one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, who said, "When you know better, you must do better." And so we must all continue to do our part as board members, as citizens, as supporters. So what I'd like to do now in closing is I would like to give each of you an opportunity to tell us how the community can be supporting your work and the work of your organization right now. Ginger, would you like to go first?
Sure. There are so many ways to get involved. Come learn about us. It's a little hard with COVID to know. I would have answered this very differently in February, obviously, but the need remains the same. And I would say it's really about building a new narrative and a new culture around the simple reality that every child needs to grow up in a bookish home. And we have the capacity in our community to completely close any book gaps that there are, and there are book gaps. And so what will it take to make that happen? Everybody can volunteer. Everybody can donate new and gently used children's books. Everybody can tell their friends. You know, I'm really struck by this world of, social media and viral, especially now when everybody's kind of desperate and isolated. They're desperate for connections. If anybody here likes what they're hearing, it's what I've been doing with Get Out the Vote. You tell a couple of friends to pass it on, because guess what? There's this possibility, and I do believe this is true, that this could become one of the only communities in the country where there is no book gap. And we all have a place to play, a role to play in doing that. And I think, once you have been a part of the magic of any of these groups that are doing this exciting work, you can't forget it. So find a way to dip a toe in the water, get involved with the ways that inspire and connect to your soul, and you probably won't look back. And when that happens, everything grows. Our capacity grows, our hearts grow, our chance to talk about changing a narrative at a population level and creating a new normal is something we can aspire to.
And Ricky, tell us how the community can support you and your organization right now.
Yeah, of course. Well, first, I just dropped the link to our website. If you want to learn more, I think the easiest way to stay involved and stay connected is just to join our listserv, our newsletter. We try to keep folks updated on what we're doing and opportunities to get involved as volunteers and as just supporters of the organization. I talk often about the beloved community that Martin Luther King Jr. talks about, and I think that's what we're doing here as partners of the United Way in the Greater Triangle, right? I would say the other part, right, is I've been, there was a reason why I agreed to this panel on the busiest week of my life as I run a campaign and continue to lead the organization towards the end of the year. And that's because I do believe in the two programs that have been so fundamental to the United Way and LatinxEd, which is the the Anti-Racism Fund, and the 10 to Watch program. And so your support to United Way in those programs really do go a long way, because you're in turn supporting organizations like LatinxEd and other partner organizations that we're working at that allow us to do this work well and allow us to continue to grow. So thank you to the United Way and everyone else that has been so supportive of what we're doing here on the ground.
Awesome. I thank you both so much. We are inspired, and Ricky, we are rooting for you on your busiest weekend ever. And we know that no matter what the outcome is on Tuesday, you are destined to do amazing things for our community and for this world. So at this point in our program, I'd love to open up the floor to some questions. If you have a question, if you want to take yourself off mute, Devin, I'm going to ask you to help me to fill the questions. And if you don't want to speak up, you can also add a question to the chat, and we'll read it for you. But would love to have some questions for our panelists and or for our folks at United Way.
This is Tim Gable. I've got really a question for the United Way team, as well as Ricky, I guess, in terms of the 10 to Watch program. I mean, this feels like, I know you've come out to RTI and talked to us and brought some folks out, but this feels like such a crucial time to really be supporting and cultivating young leaders. And I know what United Way is doing. Are you seeing this some uptake in terms of trying to, I mean, Ricky, from your perspective, being part of this program, but also Eric and team, in terms of trying to drive this program out, perhaps even further?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that initially. The 10 to Watch has drawn national attention, certainly in the United Way space. One of the conversations that we've been having with and many of you know this, the Novo Foundation and Peter Buffett, part of the partnership that and good news here, Peter and United Way Worldwide were one of only 2 United Ways that have been chosen out of literally over 1,000 United Ways throughout this country to launch a discovery process about how we can get into even further and deeper partnership. And part of what we had in our, kind of co-creation and proposal to them was an expansion of 10 to Watch nationally. So, this is attracting national attention in terms of investment. United Way Worldwide has definitely, we recently presented to the United Way National Board. And we're really trying to move our model from charity to justice. Clearly, people need basic needs now, but it is not sufficient to merely survive, but we need to be thriving, and particularly in our communities hardest hit, which are our communities of color, as Ricky articulated earlier. So it's a $500,000 investment this year that the Novo Foundation and Peter Buffett have made. And I think that's a gateway to a much larger investment. So we are very much on the radar screen of in the Triangle, not only here in the Triangle, but as a national prototype for how we do this work. And it is because of Ricky made reference to this, but my philosophy on this is that you get good leaders and you create leadership pipelines, and there's no stopping it. There's no way we're going to tackle this alone. And that's why I love working at United Way, because it's a platform that allows us to give access to leaders like Ricky and Ginger, but they also give us access, and that's when the magic happens. So, and I think the magic is happening.
Tim, I don't really have much more to add. I know you summoned me in the question, but I think that for me, it's a lot of what Eric said, right? It's about social capital. and building that community, right? It's opened doors for us to other foundations, right? To sort of have this on our resume of sorts, if you want to call it that, allowed us to really talk about the issues, and it's put leaders in the driver's seat. And so it's been a different process for us because the United Way and partners have asked us, well, what do y'all need, right? What are you seeing? And it sort of puts us in a different situation as opposed to needing to fit in a box to sort of deliver this work, to really allow us to tell folks this is what we're seeing and this is what we believe we need based on all of our experience. And so it's actually made this a really great process to allow us to think about how do we shift this proposal, or how do we sort of shift an organization to fit sort of what a foundation needs and really focus on our mission and really deliver on work that we believe in.
Can I add slightly to that? Just very quickly, I want to say a couple of things. I think that what United Way has done that is unique is it's catalyzed so many other things with these kinds of investments. And I have the privilege of working with the National Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which puts me in touch with a lot of other United Ways across the country. And I will say without any hesitation that this is the best United Way in the entire country. It's doing the most innovative work. It's getting recognition for it. It's not getting recognition for everything it's doing that's innovative, but it's just incredible how much is being figured out, and the spaces that this United Way is moving into. This ain't your grandma's United Way. And any of you on this call who are donors should be so proud of that.
I love that. This ain't your grandma's United Way. And that is true. Are there any other questions for our panelists or for Eric? Devin, do you see any questions in the chat?
Nope.
Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, I would like to just take the privilege of, again, thanking the staff. Eric, you guys are doing a tremendous job, and we wouldn't be here in this new era of United Way without your amazing leadership. So I would like to thank you, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you on this call, because again, the work would not be possible without the generous donations of our community. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Eric, to close us out.
Thank you, Linda. Thanks for an expertly moderated panel. Thanks to all of you for living into our mission each and every day with lending your ears and your big brains. And thanks, of course, to Ricky and Ginger for their leadership. Definitely so excited about the work that they're doing. I love coming to these things because I learn more and more. We're going to close with the video. It's just a couple of minutes, and I was going to say a few words afterwards, but I won't. I'll just say thank you, we're going to be doing this again in January. So tell your friends. There's lots of leadership donors out there. We're trying to build this community of leadership donors and move it more into a conversation. The final thing that I'll say too is, as impressive as Ginger and Ricky are, we didn't cherry pick them. There are leaders in our community that are doing this work every day, and they need your help and support, and that's what we're here for. Godspeed, and thank you for everything that you do, and good luck getting through Election Day, Ricky and all of us. It's an exciting time, and I think we can get through this crisis together. So thanks for everything you do, each and every one of you.
There's something that happens during a crisis.
All of a sudden,
so many of the people in the penthouse
and the people working 3 jobs to get by
find themselves open to the same vulnerability,
unsure of what their futures hold.
COVID-19 showed so many of us what it means to lose everything overnight.
It's easy to pretend that it will never happen to you.
Until it does.
Our neighbors experiencing poverty already know this fear. They wake up with it. They drive with it.
They eat with it.
They sleep with it.
The fear of losing their home, their children going hungry, their jobs disappearing.
This isn't a new feeling because they don't often experience real security or control over tomorrow.
COVID-19 didn't create poverty, but it did make it worse, especially for our neighbors stuck under the weight of systemic oppression.
Which is why people already struggling were hit harder.
And why now they have further to rise.
We
are committed to supporting Triangle residents through thick and thin.
From the beginning of poverty to the end of racial injustice.
Because COVID-19 has made it clear that while our challenges divide us,
our shared experiences can unite us.
Home by home,
we can.
Street by street,
we will.
Community by community,
we must.
Build a better way forward.
United.
United.
United.